The 12 jurors and 6 alternates in Donald Trump's hush money trial will have a front row seat to history. In fact, they're now part of history. But these next 6 weeks or so are likely to be packed with pressure for them personally. So we want to look into truly the disruption that this trial is going to cause to their lives. I'm joined now by Tuerkheimer, a litigation consultant with Trial Methods. Thanks for taking the time to join me. These jurors had to answer more than 40 questions in front of Donald Trump. Lawyers went through their social media. They had to answer to that in the courtroom. How does the scrutiny that this jury went through this week compare to what you've seen in high-profile cases?
Well, they certainly went through a lot, and they were asked a lot of questions, and as the process became smaller and smaller in terms of the eligible pool, they were the ones that survived. And what's interesting is most of these jurors, in fact, I look at the first 12, and they're all employed. A lot of them have high-powered jobs. And it's often the case where juries, they're overrepresented by retirees or maybe some people who are unemployed or underemployed. But I don't see that here. So this is a jury that I think realizes the significance and what their calling is, and I think they're going to do a good job. I think give our system of criminal justice some credit here that we ended up with these 12 folks and 6 other alternates to hear this historic trial.
What will their lives look like during this trial, which could last as long as 8 weeks?
It seems like some of them are going to have to just put a lot on hold. Now it's their personal lives come to a halt, and some of them might have to work at night. And I think that there might be some days off. I know the Wednesdays have been designated as a possible day where he's not going to hold trial, but they're going to really have to jam a lot in. And this is consuming. I mean, as you can imagine, the first criminal trial of a former president of the United States. So it's going to take a heavy toll on them in their regular lives, psychologically. But it seems like these jurors, just from what I've read and what I know about their jobs, it seems like they're up to the task.
And there's been this question about bias and the effort from both sides to try and figure out who might have an opinion that would be too much. There's a juror who called, this is a juror, someone who will be on the jury. They said about Donald Trump, quote, "They think he's selfish and self-serving, and I don't really appreciate that in a public servant. I don't know him as a person. As far as his integrity, how he portrays himself in public is not my cup of tea," end quote. How could having a personal opinion like that from a juror impact this case?
Well, the defense hopes that this juror is not overly influential in the deliberation, but it's also true that jurors can compartmentalize, and glad this juror was candid, and I think maybe the defense ran out of strikes, but the defense is going to have to hope that this juror is able to set that aside, look at the evidence, not have any personal feelings or personal distaste of the former president enter into the way this juror assesses the evidence or hears the witness testimony. And jurors are generally good at that. It's not something that the defense wanted to deal with, and in a perfect world from the defense perspective, they would have had another strike or this juror would not have made it on. But the hope is from Trump's perspective, this juror can look at the evidence, and maybe fellow jurors will also have an influence on this juror's outlook, because there's a lot of cases. Now, this is obviously different, but a lot of criminal defendants, they have unsavory acts, or there are things about their persona that jurors just don't like, and they can usually get past that. But it's not ideal from the defense perspective, but it's not an insurmountable hurdle either to have someone like this sitting on the jury.
How would you characterize the pressure these jurors will be under during this trial?
Certainly a lot of pressure. As we saw yesterday, the juror that was dismissed just because some of her family members, I believe, realized that it was her on this jury. There is pressure. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes, and I don't know if the jurors were asked this, but there's always pressure to go back home after a verdict. And these jurors are going to face pressure from friends, from family, from the community in New York County, a very blue county, if they come back and acquit Donald Trump of the charges, or conversely, will some face pressure if they have all these guilty verdicts? It's in the back of their minds, and it certainly exists. But I think day in and day out, when the jurors get in their routines, they're going to be able to really focus on what they have to do in court and hold the prosecution to its burden and give Donald Trump his presumption of innocence. And then at the end of the day, when they deliberate, they'll have to render a historic decision.
It will certainly be historic. Alan Tuerkheimer, litigation consultant for trial methods. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it, and we'll be right back.